the blues, but nothing ever stopped me.
Hi, and welcome to Run Tall with Tim. I'm Tim. Thanks for being here. I always appreciate the time that you and I get to spend together, so thanks for tuning in. And I hope wherever you are that you're happy, healthy, and staying safe. In this video, I'm going to be going over week 2 of our marathon training program, what I'm now calling the Road to Bayshore. The Bayshore Marathon is run in Traverse City, Michigan. Absolutely gorgeous part of the state for them to hold this event. The city has all of the things that you could look for in a larger city, so a lot of nightlife, things along those lines to help keep you entertained. The marathon itself is run along the shoreline, so we'll have some really scenic views of Lake Michigan, so I'm really looking forward to that. So I just want to take a second and say thank you to everybody who has subscribed to the channel. We have over 5,000 subscribers now, and that's a big database of information that we can share with one another. So I encourage you to use the comment section below in any of the videos that you might have watched to carry on those conversations and share information. I always enjoy reading them, and I try to respond to everybody's questions. But if I don't have the answer, chances are someone else will. So also, if you're new to the channel, welcome to the Run Tall family. Now, I post running shoe reviews, comparisons, and shoe battles weekly, but I also like to post other videos about running as well, like this one. So if you enjoy watching running shoe reviews and other videos related to running, be sure to subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so that you'll be notified each time that I upload new content. So welcome to week 2. The big story for this week was the weather, and I'll talk more about that here in just a minute. But to get us started, let's log in to connect.garmin.com. So to do that, I'm going to have to look away onto my computer screen for just a second. So I'm not trying to be rude, so just bear with me. I'm going to go over to connect.garmin.com, click on that, and it should bring me up right to my dashboard. My computer's not super fast, but here it is. And then from here, I'm going to navigate over because there's a couple places where we can look at and review our training for the week. And the first one is with the calendar. So as I navigate all the way over to the left, you'll see where it says calendar. I'm going to click on that. And then here it lays it out for the entire month. And I like that. One of the things that you're going to notice, maybe right off the bat, is that while this is an intermediate plan and I've dedicated 5 days a week to train for, I'm not running all 5 of those days. So some days, or some weeks it has me run 4 days, and then the following week it might have me run 5 days, and then the next week 4 days. But I'm still using or still doing 5 days worth of activities to work towards our goal of running that marathon. That 5th day where I'm not running is going to be spent doing some cross training. So here, this is a place where I like to go when I can see kind of the week laid out in advance. But one of the things it doesn't show you are those cross-training days here. So you'll notice, for example, when we look over at February 13th, that box is just empty. Well, that just simply means that I'm not running that day, but they still want me to be working towards my goal. So to look at that, we're going to go back over to the left-hand side of the screen, and I'm going to scroll down to where it says training, like we did when we set up our plan in the first video. And I'm going to go to training plans, and since this is an active plan, it's going to pop right up for me. Now, this video is delayed a little bit, so it came up to week 3, and we're talking about week 2. So I'm going to click on week 2, and now we can see the week, all of the week's activities that are related to our marathon training. And so you can see now on February 13th, Sunday, that they would like me to do some yoga classes or a yoga class, which is perfect for me because I love doing yoga for runners. It just helps, I'm getting a little bit older than I used to be, so I need to keep my muscles pliable so that they don't get injured or I don't injure myself. And then you can see that the next day was a recovery day, and then running some intervals. I'm going to talk about that here in a second. Then cross-training day. And then, so what's interesting here, though, is when I say cross-training, you'll notice that that's on the 16th, but I'm also running on the 16th. So they have me do some cross-training before I go out for that recovery run. So that's kind of a twofer on that day. And then a rest day, and rest day means just that, and I did exactly that. I did nothing related to any of this on my rest day. And then intervals on the 18th, and then ended the week with a long run on the 19th. So let's go back and we'll take a closer look at some of those things. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that I faced getting through the week. So the biggest challenge for me for week 2 was the weather, as I mentioned earlier. We got a warm up, and you would think that that would be a good thing, but it got to about 48 degrees Fahrenheit. So in Celsius, that would be somewhere around 8-9 degrees Celsius. And that meant that all of the snow that we had melted. And so we had a lot of flooding. Well, then to make things worse yet, we got a snowstorm right after that where the temperature dropped back down below freezing. So now we had all of that flooding that froze. So everything was just basically a big ice skating rink around here. So when it came to running or doing speed work on Tuesday, which I was supposed to run some intervals, I just wasn't able to do it. The fastest pace I could get was somewhere around maybe an 8:35, 8:40 minute mile where I felt safe, where I wasn't going to slip and fall on the ice. And so that was supposed to be a threshold training session. It turned out to be basically a moderate, easy run pace or run for me. So I went about, 55 minutes at that easy run pace because I simply wasn't able to run fast on that ice. So let's talk about threshold. This is a self-guided training plan, which means, as I mentioned in the first video when I set it up, that I have to determine all of those pace ranges myself. It gives me a nice, good framework to work from, but it doesn't tell me specifically like what my threshold pace should be. So there's a couple different ways that you can figure that out. Now, I ran a couple of competitive 5K races in late fall or winter months. So one in October and then one for the turkey trot, right on Thanksgiving, of course. And my pace range for that came out to be right around a 6:35 minute mile, 6:40 minute mile, somewhere in that ballpark. So the one race, it was just a little over 20 minutes. The other one, I came in just a little under 20 minutes for that 5K. So one of the ways that you can do it is you can take a look at your 5K pace range. So that race where you're leaving it all out there, right? You get done and you can barely breathe because you've been working so hard, or just leaving it all out on the field, so to speak. Is to add 20 seconds to that time. And that'll give you a pretty good threshold pace. And so for me, that put it up right around that 6:50 to 7 minute mile. So that's what I was shooting for. But if you haven't run a 5K, a competitive 5K like that, where you've, to get that first initial pace range to add that 20 seconds to, you can go by feel. So when you're out running, if you can speak only about 4 or 5 words at a time, you're going to be at your threshold pace. So that's a couple different ways that you can go about it. So let's leave the training area and we'll take a look individually at those different workouts. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but I do want to touch base on it, just kind of share with you my results and talk a little bit more about some of the other related weather issues that came into play. So to do that, again, I'm going to apologize because I'm going to look away from my screen for a second. And I'm going to navigate over to the left-hand side. And now from here, I'm going to go up to where it says activities. And I'm going to click on all activities. And then I'm going to click over on run, because that's really the only thing I'm interested in at this point. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit. Oh, I guess I was about where I needed to be. And you'll see that the week started with a recovery run on the 14th. So let's click on that. And again, I'm not going to spend a ton of time here, but this will show us that for my recovery run, I ran about a 9:21 minute mile pace for just about 6 miles. And then we'll back up and we'll go on to the intervals. Now this is where the weather conditions came into play. Again, I wasn't able to really do the interval training at threshold pace like I wanted to because of all the snow and the ice. And you can see that reflected here. I was running about an 8:30 minute mile, went 6.56 miles. But I did make up for it later in the week, and we'll take a look at that here in just a second. And then on the 16th was a recovery run. Wasn't really recovering because I didn't do the speed work ahead of time. And this plan has me doing speed work twice a week for the most part. But the recovery run, again, I ran about an 8:31 minute mile for 5.77 miles. And then it brings us to the intervals. Now here I was able to do the interval training. And to do that, I went down to a local elementary school. So I just jogged down there and basically run in their parking lot. It's about a quarter of a mile around there, roughly. Pretty tight corners, though, because it's a parking lot. But I was able to get it done. So you'll see that reflected here in the map where it has all of this kind of orange area. That's just me running in circles in their parking lot. But you do what you can. And then, for the interval training, my average pace was 7:55. But that includes your warm up and your cool down. I went 6:34 in terms of total distance, 6.34 miles. So let's break those miles down. We'll take a look at the intervals that I had run during that time. And I had run 4 different intervals, 5 minutes each with a 90-second recovery time in between. And the easiest way, or the quickest way I've found to take a look at that information, is using the app on my phone. So I'm going to go to the Garmin app that I had loaded on my smartphone and click on that. And it's going to bring me right up to my calendar. And then from there, I'm going to click on the run that I had completed. And then that's going to take me into some of the overall information. Scroll over, click on the actual run itself. So that highlights the 4 different intervals that I had completed. And for that, the first one was a 6:52 minute mile, and then 6:54, and then 6:57, and I ended with 7:03. I ended the week with a long run, and that was a 9:19 minute mile for a little over 11 miles. The big story for me here was, if we look up in the upper right hand corner, you can see that it was 16 degrees. It was actually colder than that when I started, but it was cold, and it's at 16 degrees Fahrenheit, so well below freezing, and that was the big issue for me. So I had taken out my handheld. I got a little handheld Nathan that holds I don't know, 12-14 ounces of hydration, something like that. So I took that with me. But I could feel shortly after starting, it was so cold, it didn't take long, and the liquid started to freeze, and you could feel it kind of chunking up in there. And now, fortunately, I was able to consume all of it, but it was pretty darn cold. The other thing is I took some nutrition with me about 45 minutes into the run. I took one of these bars. But I took one of the Science and Sports nutrition bars, and this particular energy bar typically is pretty moist. Right, so if you've ever had a Cliff Bar, that texture, that's how these are. But again, it was so cold, and I had it tucked in the side of my hydration bottle. It froze, so I went to try to take a bite of it, and it was just like, I was just ripping it off, and it was not a great experience. So that's just a couple of things that happened to me. Oh, and before I forget, the shoes that I wore all week long were, again, the Asics Gel Nimbus 24. I wore these all week for the first week of training as well. And that's simply because of the weather conditions that are out there, the road conditions that I have to run on. These do a pretty good job keeping me tight to the road, even under some of those more slippery conditions. They're not as slippery as some of the other shoes that I own. So that was my choice, and that was the reason why. It's not my preferred shoe to wear for doing the interval training. That's for darn sure, because they're not a speed day shoe. Now, for the week that we're in now, because again, this is a little bit delayed, I ran in 3 different shoes, so I'll be excited to tell you a little bit more about that. One of them, again, was the Asics Gel Nimbus 24, but I also ran in the Rebel V2, and I did a little bit of training in the Adidas Atastar. So we'll talk about that more next week. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed making it for you. As always, run tall, run strong, be kind to one another. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on Run Tall with Tim to continue our marathon journey.
I'm dusting off my shoes.